everyone. I'm Amanda. I'm a proud South Jersey and Shore resident and the executive director of the New Jersey Organizing Project. Like many of my colleagues who have or will testify, our communities were already struggling with major disasters before COVID hit, disasters which COVID significantly exacerbated. We're here this morning to request funding be directed to relieve and address these exacerbated crises. Imagine the first disaster you deal with is 9/11, and your husband, an emergency first responder, is permanently disabled after his efforts on behalf of our country. Your home is damaged in Superstorm Sandy, and after following all the rules and finally rebuilding, you get hit with a clawback. And then COVID hits. You contract COVID and have to close your small business. That's the story of just one of our members who lives in Toms River. While that story is unique, the multiple impacts of Sandy and COVID are not. Both individual homeowners and municipalities are being hit by clawbacks, which are the result of a broken and outdated disaster recovery system, not failings on the part of New Jerseyans. In the context of COVID, neither towns nor homeowners can afford this unjust debt. In addition, for families still working to get home 9 years later, the serious construction slowdowns, increased demand, supply chain shortages, significant increases in costs and materials have really set people back in their rebuilding. So that's why we need a double disaster relief fund. We're asking for $131.75 million with $1.75 million for rental relief funds for families who've timed out of rental assistance, $100 million for homeowner clawback forgiveness, and an additional $30 million for the 21 towns and municipalities also facing clawbacks. We thank you in advance for your serious consideration. And now I ask you again to imagine that as we all grieve the loss of over more than 600,000 Americans from COVID-19, a disease from which vaccines offer significant protection, but we have yet no cure, that last year we lost an additional 93,000 people whose deaths could have entirely been prevented. 93,000 Americans died last year from a preventable drug overdose, simply because the drug to reverse a suspected overdose wasn't in the hands of those 93,000 folks or their loved ones. This is simply unconscionable. Drug users are not expendable, their lives are valuable, and we have to do more to increase access to life-saving medication. We propose the following: increase low barrier access to life-saving Naloxone, or Narcan as it's commonly known. Although we're thrilled at the recent passage of bills here in New Jersey which allow universal access, we still need to mitigate costs. This means dedicating $50 million to increase access to Narcan over the next 3 years by either funding existing grassroots or nonprofit organizations and harm reduction centers that provide free access, and or purchasing and distributing Narcan to these same organizations, libraries, pharmacies, any place that wants to make it available. Second, we need to increase access to medication-assisted treatments, or MAT. MAT is the gold standard of care, but is only available to 1 in 5 Americans. COVID's shown us we need to be flexible and meet people where they are. So we proposed through the Department of Health, we should use an additional $50 million to get mobile MAT units up and running in every county for all people, but particularly those on Medicaid and the under and uninsured in hardest hit areas and rural and suburban regions where access to treatment and public transportation are lacking. On behalf of our members, I thank you for your serious consideration.